Okay, I'm in the book of Daniel. This is actually my second try at recording this because there's so much to cover and I actually ran out of memory on my video camera, so I have to crunch it up. So Daniel is in Babylon. He was taken with the first deportation of the Jews before Jerusalem was destroyed. That is when Jehoiakim was the king of Judah. He was delivered into Babylon's hand, and then with parts of the vessels of the house of God, he carried to the land of Shinar. And they took certain people with them, and obviously Daniel was in there. And it was him when they changed his name to Belshazzar. And Hananiah, they changed his name to Shadrach, and Mishael to Meshach, and Azariah to Abednego. So Daniel purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself with a portion of the king's meat, nor with the wine he drank. So he requested of the prince of the eunuchs that he might not defile himself. He wanted to eat poults. He asked him to give him poults and water rather than wine and the king's meat. But the prince of the eunuchs was afraid because he figured the king would kill him. So Daniel told him, prove me for 10 days and see if we are counting us to be fair. And then, so 10 days went by and they was fatter in flesh and fair than all the children which did eat the king's meat. So he took away the portion of the meat and the wine and gave them poults from then on. So they went before the king, presented themselves before the king, and Daniel was fairer than all of them. They found none like Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah when they stood before the king. And God gave them knowledge and skill and learning and wisdom. And Daniel had understandings in all visions and dreams. So they basically lifted them up, and they was over provinces, and they was government officials. They would inquire of them before certain things they would do. So now Nebuchadnezzar had a dream, and he was troubled. He was so troubled they even forgot the dream, because he called for all the magicians and astrologers and sorcerers of the Chaldeans to show him his dream. And he told him, I had a dream and my spirit's troubled. And they told him, well, O king, live forever. Tell us your dream and we'll tell you the interpretation. And he told him, it's gone from me. If you can't make it known to me, then I'll cut you in pieces and make your houses like dunghills. So then, the king was angry because they couldn't tell him the dream, and made a decree to kill all the wise men in Babylon, all the astrologers and soothsayers. And Arioch, the king's captain, they was going to go kill Daniel and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego also. And Daniel asked him, why is the king's decree so hasty? And he told him. So Daniel went in and desired of the king that he would give him the time, and he'd show the king the interpretation. So he went to his house and told Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego of what was going on, that they would desire the mercies of the God of heaven concerning the secret, and that Daniel and his fellows should not perish with the rest of the wise men in Babylon. So the secret was revealed to Daniel in a night vision, and he blessed the God of heaven. He said, blessed be the name of God forever and ever, for wisdom and might are his. And he changeth the times and the seasons, and removeth kings, and setteth up kings. He gives wisdom to the wise, and knowledge to them that know understanding. He revealeth the deep and the secret things. He knoweth what is in darkness, and the light dwelleth in him, with him. And he thanked God. So he went to the king, and told the king, he says, the secret which the king hath demanded cannot the wise men and astrologers and magicians and soothsayers show unto the king? But there's a God in heaven that revealeth secrets and maketh known to the king Nebuchadnezzar what shall be in the latter days. Thy dream is a vision of thy head upon thy bed are these. See, Daniel just didn't say, oh, I can show you the dream because I did it. He magnified God. So it goes on in the description of a statue. And of course the king, Babylonian kingdom being the head of brass. And he's basically told him, thou art king, thou, O king, art a king of kings. For the God of heaven hath given thee a kingdom, power, and strength, and glory. And wheresoever the children of men dwell, the beasts of the field and the fowls of the heavens hath he given into thine hand. And he hath made thee ruler over them all. Thou art his head of gold. And he told him, after you will come another kingdom inferior to you, and another third kingdom of brass, which shall bear rule over all the earth. And the fourth kingdom shall be as strong as iron, forasmuch as iron breaketh in pieces, and subdueth all things, and as iron that breaketh all these shall break in pieces and bruise. And then he goes on down and goes more into description, and he tells them, and in the days of these kings shall the God of heaven set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed, and the kingdom shall not be left to other people, but that it shall break in pieces and consume all these kingdoms, and it shall stand forever. So the king was all happy, fell on his face, and worshipped Daniel, commanded that they offer oblation. So he utters to him, and he set him up. He gave him many gifts. He made him a great man, and he made him ruler of all the provinces of Babylon. But then Daniel requested that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego be over the affairs. And Daniel sat in the gate of the king. He didn't forget his friends when he rose up either. So now Nebuchadnezzar makes a golden image, a statue for people to worship, and had a set time when people would worship it, and they play music, and everybody go fall down and bow to the image and pray to it. And he said, whoever don't fall down to worship it will be cast into the midst of a burning fiery furnace. So the Chaldeans accused the Jews, and they told Nebuchadnezzar, O king, live forever. You'd said if someone doesn't worship your image, that you'd have them put in the fiery furnace. He told them, there are certain Jews that you've set over the affairs of your provinces, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. He said, they haven't regarded you, nor will they serve not your gods, nor worship the golden image which you've set up. So he's furious, and he asked them, why don't you worship my image? And he said, be ready for the sound, and then when the music sounds, you're going to fall down and worship them, which I've made. And if you don't worship, at that same hour, you'll be cast into the fire. And then he told him, and who is that God that shall deliver you out of my hands? So he was mocking God because he thought he was just as high as God. So they answered the king, but we are not careful to answer thee in this matter. He said, if it be so, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us out of thine hand, O king. But if not, be it known unto thee, O king, that we will not serve thy gods, nor worship the golden image which you set up. So he got angry, and he was full of fury, and he commanded that the oven be heated 7 times more than it was to be heated. So he heated it up to the highest. And they bound the men, and it was in haste, and they opened the furnace, and the fire came out and killed the ones that took Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And then they fell bound in the midst of the burning furnace, and Nebuchadnezzar was astonished. He rose up in haste and spake to the counselors. Says, didn't we cast 3 men bound in the fire? And they said, true, O king. He says, well, I see 4 walking in the midst of the fire, and they have no hurt, and the form of the 4th is like the Son of God. So the king went to the mouth of the fire and spake and said, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, ye servants of the Most High God, come forth, and come hither. Then they came out from the midst of the fire, and there was no singe on them, no fire burns, no smell of smoke, or nothing. And he said, blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who has set his angel to deliver his servants that trusted in him, and have changed the king's word, and yielded their bodies, that they might not serve nor worship any god except their own. So then he made a decree saying he'll kill anyone that talks against Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego's God. That's like us today. No matter what we're in, if we have faith and trust in God and get a relationship with Him, and He'll deliver us and He'll be there to protect us. So now the king Nebuchadnezzar has another dream. He dreamed of a high tree and an angel saying to hew it down. He was troubled. And the soothsayers and astrologers, they couldn't interpret it. And then he called on Daniel, and Daniel was astonished. And he was afraid to tell him what it meant. So the king told him, don't be afraid, Daniel, just tell me. And he basically told him, the tree is you, O king. You're grown, and you've become strong, and your greatness is grown, and it reaches unto heaven, and your dominion to the end of the earth. And then basically he says he's going to drive you from men, and your dwelling will be with the beasts of the field, and you'll make you eat grass as an oxen, and you'll be wet with the dew of heaven. 7 times shall pass over you, till you know that the Most High ruleth in the kingdoms of men, and giveth it to whomsoever He will. And for him to know that the heavens do rule. And he's telling him to change. So it came upon the king. At the end of 12 months, he walked in the palace and was glorifying himself about all he's accomplished. And then he heard a voice from heaven saying, O King Nebuchadnezzar, to thee it is spoken, the kingdom is departed from thee. And they will drive thee from men, and thy dwelling shall be with the beasts of the field, and they shall make thee to eat grass as oxen. 7 times shall pass over you, until you know that the Most High ruleth in the kingdom of men, and giveth it to whomsoever He will. And in that same hour it was fulfilled on him. And he was driven from the men, and he ate grass, and he was wet, and his hair grew, and his nails grew. And at the end of his days he realized that God was over everything. He said, all the inhabitants of the earth are reputed as nothing, and He doth according to His will in the armies of heaven, and among the inhabitants of the earth, and none can stay His hand, or say unto Him, what dost thou? So now Nebuchadnezzar is praising and extolling the honor of the King of heaven, whose works are truth, and His ways judgment, and those that walk in pride He is able to abase. So now his son is the king of Babylon, Belshazzar, and he's having a feast of drinking wine, and they drink the wine out of the treasures of the house of the Lord, out of the vessels, which they brought from Jerusalem. Then all of a sudden he seen a hand. Saw 4 fingers. There came forth fingers of a man's hand. He just saw the fingers, and they wrote on the wall, and his countenance was changed. He was scared. His knees was shaking against each other. So he cried aloud for the astrologers and the sorcerers and all that to interpret the vision. And they couldn't. Then the queen remembered Daniel. So he goes to the king, and then the king tells him, I'll make you great and give you this and that. And he told him, I don't want anything. Let your gifts be to yourselves, but I'll show you the dream. And he told him, he says, you've not humbled your heart, but you've done worse than your father. Because he told him, King Nebuchadnezzar lifted up his heart, and he's hardened with pride, and you didn't regard this. You knew all this, but you did the same thing. And you've lifted yourself against the Lord of heavens, and they brought the vessels of his house before thee, and thy lords, and you've drunk wine. And you've worshipped and praised the gods of silver and gold and brass and iron, wood and stone, which see nor hear nor know, and the God in whose hand thy breath is, and whose are all thy ways, hast thou not glorified. And the hand was from him. And he basically told him, your kingdom is numbered and finished. And he basically said it's going to be given to the Persians. So then Belshazzar was happy, and he clothed him with scarlet, and put a chain of gold on his neck, and made proclamation concerning him, and made him the 3rd ruler in the kingdom. And in that night Belshazzar, the king of the Chaldeans, was slain, and Darius the Median took the kingdom, being about 62 years old. So he preferred Daniel above everybody, because an excellent spirit was in him, was in him, and the king thought to set him over the whole realm. So now the presidents and people was jealous, and they thought to find occasion against him, but they couldn't find no fault in him. So they told the king to make a decree that no one should pray or ask petition of any god or man for 30 days. And then Daniel saw it, but he went in his house and prayed 3 times a day on his knees. And they saw it, and then they told the king. So then the king was displeased with himself. He set his heart on Daniel to deliver him, and he labored till going down of the sun to deliver him. Now Darius was a good king, because he didn't want to see that happen to Daniel. He, because he loved Daniel. So he commanded them to put Daniel in the lion's den. He told him, "Thy God whom thou servest continually will deliver you." So the stone was brought and laid over the mouth of the lion's den, and Daniel was in it. And then the king barely could sleep that night. He was mourning, and crying and stuff, worried about Daniel. And then he got up and rushed and was lamenting for Daniel and stuff, and hollering for him. And he says, "O Daniel, the servant of the living God, is thy God whom thou servest continually able to deliver thee from the lions?" And Daniel said, "O king, live forever. My God has sent an angel to shut the mouths of the lions up, and they've done no hurt." He said, "Innocent was found, I've done nothing." And the king was glad, and he got him out, and then he commanded the ones that accused him and their families to be put in the lion's den, and the lion destroyed them and ate them up. And then the king made a decree of everyone that Daniel's God is the living God. His dominion shall be even to the end of the earth. About his kingdom shall not be destroyed. He delivereth and rescueth, and he worketh signs and wonders in heaven and in earth. So Daniel prospered in the reign of Darius, and in the reign of Cyrus the Persian. So now, through here, from chapter 7 to the end of Daniel, it gets deep. It makes you think. It makes you wonder. And all I know is God is in control. That's all I have to say. So Daniel has a dream and a vision of 4 beasts. Now the 4 beasts is Babylon, Persia, Greece, and Rome. Out of Rome, in Rome, they have 10 horns. So 10 kingdoms or federations come out of Rome. Which you look at the history books and stuff, they was divided into 10 kingdoms back then. But he saw a little horn come up, like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking great things. And he devoured 3 of the horns. So there's a little horn coming up out of Rome, and some interpret this as the Antichrist. Some interpret it as a spiritual warfare, and something spiritual rather than physical. And then in the end time it says, "I beheld till the thrones were cast down, and the Ancient of Days did sit, whose garment was white as snow, and the hair of his head like the pure wool, and his throne was like a fiery flame, and his wheels as burning fire. A fiery stream issued and came forth from before him. Thousands ministered unto him, and 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him, and he judged, and the judgment was set, and the books were opened. Then I beheld them because of the voice of the great words which the horn spake. I beheld even till the beast was slain, and his body destroyed, and given to the burning flame. As concerning the rest of the beasts, they had their dominion taken away, yet their lives were prolonged for a season and time. I saw in the visions, and behold, one like the Son of Man came with the clouds of heaven, and came to the Ancient of Days, and they brought him near before him. And there was given him dominion and glory and a kingdom that all people, nations, languages should